to our keynote speech. So for those of you that are saying hello to your neighbor, if you'll return to your seat, please continue with your dessert and your coffee. And I certainly hope that you had a very pleasant lunch. It's really my great honor and privilege and pleasure to introduce the Honorable Steve Bosworth. You know, in introducing Ambassador Bosworth, he's one of the few people in which it would be very easy and very accurate to say he needs no introduction. But quite frankly, that would be a disservice to his remarkable accomplishments in a lifetime of public service. You know, have you seen from the biographic insert that we have in our program that Ambassador Bosworth really is at the center of President Obama's efforts to seriously address the North Korea issue. He is the dean, as you know, of the Fletcher School at Tufts University and serves as the U.S. Special Representative for North Korea policy. He is a three-term and perhaps this accounts for fourth time as a U.S. ambassador. He was the ambassador, as most of you know in this room, to the Republic of Korea, and that was from 1997 to 2001. He was the ambassador to the Philippines from 1984 to 1987, and that's really where I first began to know of him as I was doing current intelligence at SIGPAC on the Philippines, and I admired the work that Ambassador Bosworth was doing in the Philippines at the time. And before that, he was ambassador to Tunisia from 1979 to 1981. In 1987, he was the recipient of the American Academy of Diplomacy's Diplomat of the Year Award. You know, and as someone who has followed Korean affairs as closely as I have for a number of years, I can tell you there is no one better qualified, better suited to be our lead on North Korea issues, particularly for this administration. And so, you know, in advance of his remarks, I want to thank Steve very much for taking time out of a very busy schedule to be here as we commemorate Korean American Day. And you know, so please join me in welcoming Ambassador Bosworth.
Jack, thank you very much. First of all, let me congratulate you and KEI for this, what I think is a splendid initiative, and your annual recognition of Korean American success stories, of which there are many, many who go on with this initiative for a long time. We're not going to run out of raw material. As I was listening to the honorees speak, I was reflecting a little bit on a couple of things. First of all, I have the pleasure of knowing Howard Koh's mother, and his success comes as no surprise to me. Neither does his brother's success come as no surprise to me. This woman is a force of nature, and I think that both her sons and the rest of their brothers and sisters were extremely blessed to grow up in that household, because she obviously inculcated in her offspring this concept of public service, not just as a duty, but as a subject of passion. And Howard and Harold have certainly exemplified that in a very meaningful way. And listening to the other two stories, I come away with the view that, as is always the case, Korean mothers played an enormous role in what these guys did. And as someone who's been in and around Korea for the last 25 years or so, I see this, I continue to see it on a day-to-day basis. The role of a Korean mother is beyond description. So you all benefit from that, and I give you this chance to congratulate you on your achievements, and more importantly, to congratulate you on the achievements yet to come, because you are all of a generation, which means you have many more years of public service ahead of you, and the country benefits from the sacrifices that you have already made. It is obvious to me that this country, over the last many years, particularly over the last decision that we took back in the 1960s to open our borders to people who formerly found it very difficult to come here. And those are citizens of the Asian countries. And the benefits that have come to the United States as a result of that are really beyond description. And among all of the Asian American immigrants, I think none have been more successful or more important to what's happened in our own country than those coming from Korea. There are days when I feel surrounded by Korean Americans. At the State Department, I work with a lot of them, including my good friend and colleague, Ambassador Sung Kim, whose own life story is not unremarkable. He and his brother and sisters came here when they were teenagers and raised themselves in a very real way, although the paternal and maternal instinct was never far away. But the values that they absorbed in that process continue to be very important to, obviously. At the Fletcher School, we have many Korean students. We have many Korean American students. And I'm enormously grateful that the school continues to be a place that attracts Korean Americans and Koreans. In the State Department, people sometimes ask me, because I have more experience with the State Department than most of these days. People frequently ask me, well, what's the biggest difference between the State Department now and when you came in sometime in post-World War I period? And my answer to that is that the entire composition of the State Department is fundamentally changed, and very much for the better. When I joined the Foreign Service in the Kennedy administration, it was primarily a white, male, East Coast establishment. That is long gone. It now is an institution that is far more female than it used to be. It is an institution that is far more diverse in terms of racial and ethnic makeup. And I recently remarked to my wife as I came back to Boston, having been here for a meeting at the Korea desk, as I look around that conference table, there are only 2 or 3 males. And there are only 2 or 3 people without some Asian blood. So it is really, it's an exercise in diversity, and I think that the opportunity for the rest of us to benefit from this infusion of Asian American values, energy, dedication, and concentration on the importance of public service is something which, for me at least, I welcome. I also found recently, I woke up one morning and discovered that the president of my university, Governmental College, is an Asian American, Jim Kim, who is the first Asian American president of an Ivy League university. Very accomplished man in his own right, and I think will be enormously good for Governmental College. So, I think, as I said, Jack, you have raw material before you for many more of these kinds of ceremonies of recognition. I commend you for the initiative, and I commend you for the diligence with which you track these people down. I'm going to say just a few words about some of the other things that I do, other than note the change in the composition of the State Department. We have been engaged in diplomacy with regard to North Korea, and specifically North Korea's nuclear program, for about a quarter of a century. I've been engaged in it since the mid-1990s with the initiation of the Korean Energy Development Organization, Keynote, and then going from there to Seoul as ambassador, and coming back to this country and continuing to be interested in it. But only recently, last year, did I come back to it in a kind of official capacity.